morning. I'm excited to invite you to another episode of Mindset Growth Podcast. I am very excited for our guest today. Shannon Latham with Shed Geek Podcast is here with us.
Shannon Latham, you might want to...
Shannon Latham with Shed Geek Podcast is here with us.
I was about to say, you might want a memo on that, but just call me Shed Geek. I prefer Shed Geek. That's probably better anyway.
They'll edit all that for us.
Interesting story. Sean was going to be my name. So yeah, my mom watched soap operas, and the guy on there named Sean turned out to be a bad guy, and she said, I won't name my son Sean. So it went to Shannon.
Oh, so. Interesting. Well, that gets us started right away with some fun facts. I was just going to ask you to tell us a little bit about yourself, but I think you've started already. So
it's hard for me not to do that as a fellow podcaster, to take center stage at times on accident, huh? So basically just a pretty simple guy from the Midwest, born on the Ohio River there and in Kentucky, and found my way through this long 42-year journey into the shed industry, where I've started doing a podcast and video and interviewing guests that sort of B2B model inside the industry.
Sure. So you don't live in the area you grew up anymore. You've kind of
I do. It's fairly close, maybe just 45 minutes or so away. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about some of the things you've done. I know you served in the National Guard and some of that. So would you come from a military family?
I didn't. Actually, it's kind of interesting, I guess, if I did like a bio on me, and you'll have to cut me off somewhere. If not, I'll go down too many rabbit holes. Mom and dad, both hardworking, just blue collar family, came from that environment. Grew up at the time. I would look back and say we grew up poor. Just nobody told us, my parents certainly did, but they did all they could to kind of get us started. First to graduate, neither one of my parents graduated high school. And, so education wasn't something that they pushed, but hard work was something they told us we were going to have to do no matter what.
Right.
So kind of grew up in that mentality. My dad would always side hustle, mowing yards and whatever he could do,
right,
just to make a buck. And he told us we were going to work, to the point of taking me and my brother out in the backyard and having us dig a hole and then fill it back in.
Right.
And a lot of times he was just trying to teach us how to use a shovel, just get out there and work. So probably early age, started these helping my dad lawn mowing. It's really simple, just 14, 15 years old, driving the truck and trailer around and in our little town and taking it off and getting all these yards mowed.
Right.
In the summertime, we'd help set up the ball fields for, the Corey League. And it was just a fun time of my life. It was really cool. And then come my senior year, I'm dating a girl and who's now my wife, and just really didn't have direction.
Right.
In life was the biggest thing. So signed up for the National Guard. My cousin was in, so I went through basic training at Fort Leonard Wood in 1998, and I loved it. I hated it. I was scared. I was 17. Right. I loved it. I hated it. It was all very exciting to me, and probably would have done a full-on military career, but stayed in the National Guard, and it was a fun time. And then there was this transition into trying to find career after that. My wife's dad, he worked in the prison system, and in Illinois, especially in Southern Illinois, that's a good job.
Right.
If you can get a good state job, there's so many prisons we're opposite of Chicago.
Right.
Right. So, there's a lot of them nested in Southern Illinois, and if you get on, it's good retirement. And all I heard was good retirement, good insurance. Right. And I think probably the path that I was on, had it not been for my wife, would have been, who knows, maybe more inclined to be in prison versus working at one. And really just life changed. And I got the National Guard. That straightened me out a little bit, and then went to work for the Department of Juvenile Justice, and in the state of Kentucky, and worked at the McCracken Regional Juvenile Detention Center for about 2.5 years, and thought, okay, this is it. I'm gonna go be I'm going to go be a prison guard, right? That's what I'm going to do with my life. And yeah, just kind of kicked around for a while. Gary, really. I mean, I did. I didn't have any focus. I went to work for the county jail, and I had an opportunity to go to work for a prison, and I didn't do it. I didn't take it. A friend of mine, his dad was very high up in the politics of the prison and the hiring process. And he said, "You want a job? You can have one." And really, I think that was a changing point for me in my life to say, is this what I want to do? I just didn't like it. Prison felt like a business.
Right.
And jail felt like a business. It didn't feel like a job.
Right.
So, yeah, I had that opportunity and I didn't take it. And, didn't really know why. I didn't know what God had in store for me on that. It was confusing. And actually,
are you a creative person?
Oh yeah, I love
so
love
that would have felt
creativity.
very confined to you, probably.
Absolutely.
So just with the creativity, you didn't have that side available to you if you worked in that.
Yeah,
setting.
yeah, absolutely. It's very structured, very much about rules and just very point blank. Like
Right.
this is what you do. And I think I felt more than anything, I felt like the system was broken.
Right.
I wasn't just a big fan of rehabilitation versus retribution. Like, what does this look like? I mean,
Right.
are we trying to actually, what's the purpose of prison?
Right.
Is it to separate the criminal from the public? And then what?
Right.
They've paid their dues once they've met their term. So you got 10 years because you did this, and now you come out. But are you any better?
Right. Did you learn a skill or a trade or anything in there?
And
a lot of them, and I mean, I'm just kind of throwing that out there because
Yeah.
I've watched something recently of a gentleman who spent about 30 years in prison, and it was interesting to me. He's saying all the same things you're saying.
Yeah.
He said, there's a lot of skills that could be taught and learned. And
Sure.
education, and even how sometimes people end up there is not ethical.
Yeah.
So-
That's right. Yeah. It's to me, it's a wasted resource. Because I guess that's the question you have to ask yourself is the purpose to rehabilitate or just to remove from public? Because I think there's like 600,000, inmates get released every year, and they go out into your communities, to your churches. They go
Right.
out to your schools. They go out into
Right.
your workplaces. And the question is that person rehabilitated? Was
Right.
just the harsh nature of the confinement the turning point?
Right.
And for some people, I think it is. They find God, they have time in there
Right.
to read. And, so I didn't know this, but it was sort of a precursor to my life. Excuse me. It was sort of a precursor. I didn't take that job, and there was a surveillance job at a casino that was close to home. And I went and applied for that job, and I got a call back for security. Go into security, and within 3 months, I see this really cool bartending opportunity. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe this is what I want to do. Everybody's saying, oh, go to work for the prison, go take the right job, a serious job, and don't make $6 an hour plus tips bartending,
Right.
And I didn't listen. I did that. And what I really enjoyed about my time at the casino, which I ended up putting about 9 years in, there was really, it taught me to come out of my shell in customer service. I didn't know I had that in me.
Right.
And the casino industry is phenomenal whenever it comes to customer service.
Right.
I mean, typically you walk in and you don't walk out with something tangible.
Right.
So you walk out with an experience.
Right.
So I would always tell people that I kept a smile in my back pocket just for days that, I didn't feel
Right.
like performing. But they literally put you on what they call a spotlight as you walk up to a customer. You walk up and you're in the spotlight, and you're trying to get that customer to feel like they've been served,
Right.
by every staff member there, and that they can do that. Because again, it's an experience. You're probably not
Right.
getting a shed, right? You're not getting
Right.
a car. You're not walking out with something that you can touch and feel usually. So the experience is what you're paying for.
That's interesting. And I'm going to spin off that a little bit because I work with so many businesses that are service businesses in
Mhm.
the coaching. And I think that's a piece that we talk about a lot is customer service.
Mm-hmm.
But I like what you just brought out there. And I don't think very often that people will view it that way. And it doesn't matter if they're putting siding on a house, flooring, what they're doing. You're right. They're getting a tangible item, but at the end of the day, it's still the experience of how that went.
Sure.
To where the referrals and the next follow-up sales are going to go, probably even maybe the quality or the size of the jobs and things they get. So
Sure.
thanks for pointing that out. I want viewers to hear that, because the experience, and really we build our own brand. I talk about that quite a bit. We're all building our own brand. It's what I'm doing every day. It's what you're doing right now, is building that. And if we can create that good experience that people can enjoy, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I completely agree. I learned so much from the casino industry. I mean, it fed our family for several years, and I worked through a couple of different jobs, within that particular property, and it really opened me up out of my shell to get me into feeling comfortable with even sales, and you're going to just fail multiple times with customers,
right?
As you're trying to provide this level of customer service. But as long as the company would hold us to a high level of accountability, it worked for me to eventually learn. You just learn your own style. I mean, to me, it's a age-old question: are salespeople born, or are they taught? Can you teach them? How much can you teach? And I really felt like I learned a lot through working there. It was good.
It was more valuable and set you up for future endeavors, right?
Yeah, for sure. Ended up going to college while I was there for business. Just kind of thought to myself, I want to go back. I eked through high school, just barely got through. The guidance counselor probably did me a favor, who knows, and just had no sense of direction,
right?
Back then. So you move forward, and then I remember reading from the Bible. I'd actually gotten saved whenever I was a bartender at the casino. So you want to talk about an unusual experience, is going in the next day and trying to make some sense of that. Yeah, I didn't quite know how I was gonna transition. But I started going to school and said, I think business and entrepreneurship has always been in the back of my head. I mean, I'm not easily employed. I'm creative, so I have too many of my own ideas, and they're often seen as challenging.
Right.
If you do that, and I knew that about myself. So, I craved information when I got saved. I remember reading, I think it's James 1:5, any man that lacks knowledge, let him ask, and it'll be given to him. And I remember being in the living room of the house I grew up in. We had moved back into, me and my wife, with we had two children, still do at the time. We had two little ones though, and trying to figure it out. And I remember asking God, like, why am I not smart enough to succeed? Like, what am I doing wrong that I can't succeed and can't be successful? So I felt very powerful, like the presence of God, whenever I read that verse that said, okay, I'm asking for knowledge. I mean, make me smarter, because I don't know how to be smarter. And I think it takes me being smarter for me to be successful in some way.
That's interesting. Because I can identify with some of that, as far as, sometimes we look at, we get pigeonholed, and I've seen it with kids. I've probably experienced it, like when we're in school. There's certain kids that are just very studious and do really well. And I think sometimes, I know for myself, it felt like I was pigeonholed as the dumb kid.
Yeah, yeah.
And it took me a lot of years of just deciding every day I'd learn something new to realize that that's not me, and I'm sure it's not you either. But it's interesting how kids will pick up on that and get put in those positions. But I guess I want to transition a little bit to keep moving forward. What's your greatest achievement in life so far?
Oh gosh. It's a good question. Family is I hold it in such high regard. Me and my wife started dating when I was 15 years old. Married at 19, and now we've been married since March of 2000. And I really just feel like just raising, us being married and raising a family. To me, the nuclear family is something that's sort of, I don't want to say under attack. It's maybe that's fair, but it's just something that's so looks so dredging almost, to people nowadays. It's really served me well to, have my my wife by my side and just raise our 2 children,
Right.
And set forth like a new path,
Right.
you know, to establish from our family. Yeah, I say this with great humility. You know, I've been married longer than either one of my parents. I mean, they're great
Right.
people, right? But you know, we grew up in this broken home. My 6th child of my dad's 3rd marriage, a
Right.
2nd child from my mom's 2nd. You know, and phenomenal people, good, hardworking people. But I wanted to break the mold.
Right.
I think at some point and say I want to chart a new course for my family. Show them that education is important. You know, you're talking about kids that just pick things up naturally. My son, you know, has never studied, I swear, a day in his life. And, you know, he's got a 4.0 GPA,
Right.
but we're blessed with that. My daughter had high honors and she's already working on her bachelor's degree. Just watching them, I think, be successful. I told them I always want them to have more than I do. And I want them to have that for their kids. So I really think family, I know that's a very, uneventful answer.
No, it's a huge accomplishment. I
Yeah.
mean, at the end of the day, we always talk about, and you hear people talk about the fact that, you know, we can't take anything with us when we leave this earth. But I would challenge the thought that the thing we can take is the relationships, or the things
Yeah.
we can leave it behind that are most important are the relationships. So at the end of the day, it's all about that. And
Yeah, I read something the other day that said everything you do for yourself you take with you, but everything you do for others you leave behind. Right.
right.
So,
So that's interesting. If you could spend a day with a historical figure, who would it be?
oh wow, another great question. I would say possibly Ronald Reagan. You know, he's deemed as the great communicator.
Right.
Communication is a terribly imperative thing in my life. I feel like 99% of the world's problems could be solved with proper communication. And I just think that we as a people have the hardest time getting what's in here to your ears
Right.
and to your heart. That somehow that channel way from my heart to my mouth to your ears to your heart is the longest distance in mankind. And we just don't do it good. We don't
Right.
always communicate well.
No, it's a huge problem, I think. And I think that's, when we look at education, there's also that whole factor of there's folks that are very intelligent, but just even being on this podcast, I think the thing that I've learned doing things like this is how do you articulate what you're trying to say and communicate it so people can understand it, so that there's value there.
Yeah.
And that's so I can appreciate that quite a bit. In fact, Ronald Reagan, I just recently listened to some of his jokes, you know,
Yeah.
but it's interesting how he would say the joke, but he was driving home a point at the same time, and it was kind of a mic drop. I mean, he would do that
Yeah.
so many times.
Yeah, Reagan, you know, Paul Harvey. They always talked about, you know, Paul Harvey being a great communicator. But in terms of like historian, I really think of, I mean, Ronald Reagan comes to mind. Obviously, Lincoln comes to mind. I mean, he's a Illinois boy and really born in Kentucky, so I can identify with that so much. Yeah, I would say that short answer, that would be it for me.
Okay. What's one of the strangest or funniest things you've ever seen walking down the street?
Oh, just walking down the street. Gosh, strange or funny.
We're just throwing a couple at you just to kind of
yeah,
get you
no,
warmed
that's
up.
good. Man, I don't know that I have anything that comes to mind. My mind tends to go toward the unusual. I question like maybe too much. My wife says we're going to get on to the airport to get on a plane in St. Louis a few months back, and this just comes to mind. And there's a homeless guy, and he's walking down the street in the middle of the interstate with no shoes on in July, and 70 mile an hour cars are just flying around him. And I just remember thinking how odd that you would be in a place, you know, that you would be walking down the middle of the street on a hot asphalt road with no shoes, with 70 mile an hour cars zipping around you. And my mind instantly goes to the how did this come to be?
Right. What led up to that?
Like I would never, like I say, I would never do that because I can't imagine having to go through all the steps that it would take.
Right.
To get to the point to where all hope is lost.
Right. You have a morning routine?
I don't.
You don't. You just wing it.
I really do. I wish I had a morning routine. I think I will get that when my kids are moved out, which is soon, and me and my wife can work together regularly. We work as a good team. We're a very well-oiled machine, the two of us. So I think that we'll have that. But for now, no, I don't. I can't say that I get up and do the same things every day. I should.
No, that's fine. I just know a lot of folks do.
Yeah.
There's a lot of folks that don't. I don't know if there's a right way or a wrong way. If
Yeah.
you're a visionary and a creative person, but I know for myself, it's really difficult to do the same things every day. In fact, it's even difficult to say the same things. If I've got to say something and then do a retake on it, I can't even say it the second time.
I remember really whenever I was involved in ministry, faith-based drug and alcohol ministry for a while, and that kind of almost segues back to the story of asking for that knowledge and later eventually having an opportunity to work in that. I was very close to the Lord at that time in my life, and to the point where I remember waking up every day. And the first thing I would do whenever I woke up is I would audibly say out loud, "Thank you, Lord, for this day. Thank you for another opportunity. Even though I'm not doing what I want to do, I'm doing what you have me doing." And I remember having to talk myself through it out loud every day. And I did that every day for a year. It's the closest I've ever come to a routine, but I said, I'm going to do this 365 days. And I did.
Well, words mean things.
Yeah.
We're our worst critic. And
Yeah.
I've said this before many times, but how we talk to ourselves is extremely important.
Yeah.
Because we will believe what we hear.
Yeah.
And if it's good or bad. And so it's just a mindset that we put ourselves in.
Yeah.
You've had a interesting life as far as tried a lot of different things, like you've talked about being in the prison system as far as working in it.
Yeah.
Then casino and National Guard. What are some of the more interesting things? If you look back and can summarize, what were, we've talked about a lot of this already, but if you could just pinpoint a couple of points of interest along the way that maybe you look back now that were guiding moments. Yeah,
I think probably some of the things that stick out is like I remember being young and thinking in some ways it felt like, I am going to live forever and at the same time tomorrow's the last day I'm ever going to have. And I remember just the immaturity that I had as a young person. And a lot of that only comes through experiences. So learn not to beat yourself up through the experiences that you're going to have in life. It's, just thinking back, there's a million things that you could say, I would do this over. And if you did that over, who knows what it would lead to that wouldn't have been something brilliant that you had an opportunity to experience. Learn to embrace the easy and the difficult. Really, I think if I could tell myself one thing over, it's like, hey, you're about to have a rocky ride and it's going to be very interesting, but you're going to be judged. You're going to be a lot of things. And, you're just going to have to learn how to be steadfast because no one's going to be there really to do that for you. You're going to have to be your own cheerleader a lot of the time. Right. That's insightful. That's, I think that's a hard piece for a lot of folks to handle. And I know it was difficult for me. I tend to not care for the spotlight. Yeah. Because I don't want to carry that judgment. And now that I'm doing podcasts and doing consulting and all these other things, I've got people that just go on social media and just tear me up. Yeah. And it's kind of like, I'm like, I think we'd maybe be friends if if you just gave me a phone call and we could talk. Yeah. But instead you've decided to just blast whatever for whatever reason. And I'm sure it triggered whatever I had said or what my line of work is, triggered something of an experience they had. So, it's unfortunate they react that way. I had a guy recently tell me we judge others by their actions, but we judge ourselves by our intent because only we know our intent, right? Right. We don't know the intent of the other person. Even words are highly miscommunicated. I mean, the word argue. I used to always say,
Right.
the word argue has such a negative connotation. We don't learn without iron sharpening iron. So without us being actually engaging and debating, and I know me, I'm a highly emotional. So it might not seem like it on this podcast, but typically a little more energy and I get
Right.
excited depending on the topic, and I'll get very vocal.
Sure.
And sometimes that's misconstrued, right?
Right.
As like anger or frustrated or upset, but just being excited, just to me, it just means you're passionate, about what you're discussing.
Yeah.
So
I can identify with that. I think we're misunderstood, or people like that are misunderstood, because it doesn't take much. It can also trip us maybe to anger pretty quick.
yeah,
As I look back, I've learned that a lot of it was self-defense
yeah,
mechanism. It was just the fight instead of
Yeah.
flight. And, I was passionate about whatever cause I was going to stand for.
We were talking about defense mechanisms that you pick up, just throughout your life. And I know I do. I know that I have. And some of those you got to learn to let go of at some point.
Right.
You pick those up for a season, but sometimes the season's over. So it's okay to let your guard back down at times also. Trying to figure that out, trying to know whenever all of those moves, it's a chess game. I mean, really, no one told me that life was so, it had to be so well thought. Some people seem like they just wake up and have everything figured out. And I think the reality is that there's a plan for almost everything that you do.
Right.
You do it with intention. So, some people I think just carry it well and make it look easy.
Yeah, it's but the fact is you're on your journey and
Yeah.
not somebody else's, and I'm on mine, and it's so that piece of it, I mean, I've embraced where I'm at, and I agree with the seasons, and I probably am quicker to not try to defend anymore. I mean, I always felt like I had a responsibility to go back and defend everything that I was accused of or did, and anymore it's kind of like I've
You
gotta
really
let it
want
go.
to, though, Gary. I mean, there's a guy who told me recently. He said, one of the things is you defend yourself too much. You defend yourself too, and I really gave that a lot of thought.
Yeah.
This was a boss of mine, and I was like, yeah, it's interesting, that I would feel that I have to defend myself.
Right.
So much, so whether he was right or wrong that I defend myself too much, these absolute comments like too much or you're an overthinker, I always dismiss those comments almost early on because I'm overthinker. Like, who says that I'm overthinking it? Maybe you're underthinking it,
Right.
like no one ever says that. What if I thought about it the right amount?
Right. And
So-
you got it right instead of just getting it done.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have a statement out on your website when we're doing a little bit of research that caught my attention.
Okay.
And surprised me that you even had it out there. So I'm going to
Yeah.
put you
go
right on
with
the
it.
spot with
Sure
it here. You say that you stated you have a laundry list of bad bosses and bad decisions.
Yeah.
And I'm not surprised that you have some people that don't like you with
Yeah.
that statement.
bad jobs, bad bosses, bad decisions. Some things just are what they are. They're not good opportunities, but there's an opportunity to learn in it. So, bad bosses, sure. I've had bad bosses, made bad decisions. Absolutely. Certainly very accountable for a lot of my own bad decisions, immaturity, stubbornness, ego. I can think of like plenty to, like you said, we're our own worst critics. So there's not really anything that they could say to me. I haven't probably beat myself
Right.
up on 10 times already
Right.
and tried to figure it out. And I think at some point you just have to move past that. I think you have to mature and move past that. Otherwise they'll live rent free in your head forever. So yeah, I've got, if you stand for something, though, like Gary, to me, you're going to create some enemies in your lifetime. You're going to create some people that at least disagree with you, whether that's an enemy or not. We're just not all like-minded. We're not all going to be exactly on the same page.
Correct.
So I try to communicate that. And I think my favorite thing's when we can still be friends and disagree. That's
Well,
okay.
it just caught my attention that you had stated that you've had bad bosses out there. I'm like, maybe those guys don't come back and never read your website, or maybe they come back and read it and go, I don't know how he's accomplished that.
There's
that's the case with me.
Yeah, there's almost a growing mentality to be completely overly sensitive about every thought and
Right.
every word that you say nowadays. And you know, I'm still a person in this human experience that's on a journey that's trying to figure things
Right.
out too, and going to make a tremendous amount of mistakes, and they are too. Bad
Right.
bosses doesn't mean bad people. Maybe they just weren't leaders, and I think that it's more important to be a good leader than just be a boss. So
I would agree with that.
yeah,
We talk a lot about leadership in our consulting business. Obviously, that's really everything. It's the foundation of it. So that's what we deal with a lot. Question I want to transition to now a little bit, and we haven't even talked about it yet. And we're 30 minutes in here. So you've got a podcast called Shed Geek.
Yeah.
So we've talked about everything leading up to this point, I'm assuming, but we haven't gotten to anything about what got you into the podcast or what got you into the shed industry. And I know that I work with people who build sheds.
Mm-hmm.
They're clients of mine, and that's primarily the industry you work in. So, for ourselves, we work a lot with business structure and efficiencies and leadership, how to provide good work environments for employees, how to attract and keep them, treat them right, maybe better than what competing business owners will treat them.
Yeah.
At least that's my heart, that people work with me and they work with the companies I work with. And the reason for that is that they do it because we're going to provide better opportunities and treat them more fairly. So I'd like to hear a little bit about what got you there.
Well, what got me into the shed industry was I was trailing out of faith-based drug and alcohol ministry. I had worked full-time for 1 year, sort of dedicating my service to that. They say ministries for the outcome, not for the income. So I can identify with that. We went through a year of this is to give back. This is to serve. And had met a friend through that process that his testimony sounded a lot like mine. He went to work in the shed industry. I had worked in the shed industry in purchasing before doing this faith-based drug and alcohol rehabilitation. And basically he said, "Hey, you want to start a shed lot?" I said, "Yeah, let's do it. I've got no idea direction of where I'm going now." I thought maybe ministry was going to, that would continue on. It didn't. I feel like that was the right decision. And, I started selling sheds. The next thing you know, we've got 3 lots and we're looking at a truck and trailer, and, talked about getting into the building side, and then, started realizing that maybe, not knowing that I was decent at marketing, or at least marketing myself, and that there was other opportunities that was coming up. I mean, with e-commerce and social media, the way it really blasted the retail side of things, it's just started getting this understanding. I was far from a tech geek. I say this a lot of time on my own podcast. I'm not a tech geek. I'm a shed geek, and I'm learning all these different tech components,
right?
Even in a tech space and podcasting. I mean, I'm helping build very minimally, but some of the back end of the website right now. And I'm like, yeah, all these things are completely foreign to me.
Right.
Didn't own a computer until I was probably 34. So, I was like, wow, this is interesting, but it took me a while to grasp. How do you put all that into something that's productive? And, so got into sales and doing all this different, got into the rent-own side of the industry. So if you're doing that, you're doing, sales calls.
Oh, right.
So you're going out and you're visiting all these different shed manufacturers.
Right.
And you really realize how cool a lot of these people are, and their stories, and they're kind of characters in their own right.
Right.
And then the hauling side kind of has that, and sales side. And I'm looking at all of this fragmented industry as sort of like just a wealth of opportunity that no one's choosing to organize or establish or put their mark on. And having conversations and yeah, my wife, I'd had this thought, and God had sort of put it in my mind to say, hey, relax. But, I'm listening to a lot of podcasts, and I got this idea. You do a podcast. You should do a podcast. What am I going to speak about? Politics? Am I going to speak about, I realized I'm so involved in the shed industry, me and my friend. And, we just had the conversation. Let's do this about sheds. Let's record these conversations that we're having while we're on the road so much. It worked out perfect. Actually, my wife had actually ended up finding out she had breast cancer. And then I was like, how am I going to go work and stay home and care for her,
right,
and provide for my family at the same time? And the podcast came to mind, and it wasn't even monetized yet. I mean, it's really remarkable because I wasn't even thinking of it in terms of monetizing it. And I said, well, I can at least get the customers perhaps to come to me if I can give value to them with nothing in return.
Right.
So I can get these people on talking about the hauling side of things, the building side, the sales, the marketing, all of these different things. And people responded tremendously. I think they were just hungry for that in the industry.
So it was out of that experience that you started the podcast?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Started it and started booking guests. And then one person says to me one day, why aren't you monetizing this? We could pay for ads on here. I mean, you've got several hundred people listening to you now. And it's like, and then developed a plan out of that.
Okay. And then, but you just started shooting them at home. Like, with
in a shed.
Very basic equipment, I have to believe.
I did invest in good mics and good equipment. I got a Rodecaster Pro and I got good mics, good Rode mics, and good sound quality. And then started doing call-ins, definitely audio driven, and then have started working on developing that into video, really as of late, and building out a YouTube channel and a brand. And
so, how long ago did you start the podcast?
It's been about 19 months. It was a year ago in March, so March would be 2 years, so roughly 80 to 85 episodes right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you shoot, what, one a week?
One a week. So it's a little bit different. A lot of times I'll use my travels to sort of coincide. So it's not all, sometimes it's by Zoom or some type of, podcast software. A lot of times I like to do in person, so I'll travel. And when you're in the shed industry, it's just a perfect opportunity to break bread with someone,
right?
In the industry. And there's, through that is relationship building. I've never been good at sales, Gary. I'm good at relationship building. All my sales come from the relationship building. I never.
But I would argue if you're good at building relationships, you're good at sales.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's how quickly can you build that relationship.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just that connection piece. Once people buy from people they trust.
That's right. Yeah.
So that's important. But that's interesting that in 19 months or less than 2 years you've built it to what it is today. It's not your full-time thing yet. Is that right?
So it is. I recently transitioned to do this full-time, and it's kind of peculiar how it works out. I basically have advertising. It's very niche, right? So it's a B2B. I don't really face the customer. It's all industry facing. So in some ways, it's kind of like having fish in a barrel for the people who are very interested in their career. And if they're in the shed industry, then I just anticipate you're going to be very interested, whatever you're doing today. If you're in sales, if you're in the medical field, if you're in retail, I can't help but think that if you're not taking every resource to learn and try and do better in your craft, no matter what it is, those people probably won't listen if they're not serious. But if they're people who want to be involved, they want to be, have knowledge about what's happening in the industry, trends and just different things. That's sort of my goal, is to present that as a whole. So it's turned into a full-time opportunity through advertising and affiliate partnership.
Okay, so you're out of the other sides of shed industry, and you're just in the podcast space, and really trying to educate and bring people together through that. Or what's your motive, or what's like your mission statement?
Yeah, so the tagline is education through entertainment. I love to laugh. The God gives us a sense of humor. I will laugh with the best of you. I actually love to cut up and joke and.
Gosh, I'm a boring host. I've got you. We've been nothing but serious all this whole hour.
No, you're not boring at all. It's really the right environment. The right environment, tends to lead you to those moments of laughter. But education is very important too, is it not? So people,
absolutely,
they want to know, like, educate me on what's happening in the industry or different products or services. So that's really what's provided that opportunity for me.
So what are the target audiences that you try to hit with the podcast to serve your viewership?
Yeah, so obviously getting an email list and being able to contact those people in the industry is important. So I sort of started there. The plane community is a big reach for me. We actually have a dedicated hardline call-in landline that the Amish can listen. And there's a lot of Amish and Mennonite barn builders, shed builders,
They're good craftsmen and hardworking folks.
Yeah, absolutely. So just being able to reach that audience. So I can identify, usually between 600 to 1,000 listeners a week, and about 300 of those are plane community folks who actually call in and listen on a landline.
Okay. Talking
about, just shed industry specifics, from e-commerce to services and products. And, and then otherwise, people listen through just,
other platforms.
Yeah. We're closing in on, between what I can measure between YouTube and the hosting site and our landline, somewhere around 50,000 listens in roughly 18 months. So
that's awesome.
Yeah,
it's been a good start. That's got to be a fun time. So what are some of the things advertisers can expect to benefit from being associated with you? And I'm just, maybe you don't want to go into all that,
no,
but we can give you a shameless plug here a little bit, possibly. What would be their benefit to work with you?
Well, advertising is such a peculiar spot, isn't it? For anyone who's in marketing, it's like trying to nail Jell-O to a wall, trying to figure out what marketing means and when does it work and when does it not. And I don't know, what's the quote, half of your marketing dollars work, but nobody knows which half,
Right.
So everyone's trying to measure is the biggest thing.
Right.
They're trying to effectively measure your reach. And a lot of times you just don't get that. Business owners are the worst, right? Effectively measure every dime.
Well, they try to measure everything.
It just, and a lot of times that's not, so with a creative mind, that doesn't work. So when I think of advertising, I think of, I don't like the term influencer, so to speak. I can endorse a product, but you should always find out for yourself. You should always go check a product out and do your due diligence to make sure that it's the product and service that you need.
Right.
Just being a loud voice, you'd probably be surprised. Loud voices don't always have it figured out.
Right.
So for me, if you want to hit a target market, it's like shooting fish in a barrel, for lack of a better way of saying it. The shed industry is listening. If I talk to anyone outside the shed industry about, 3D configuration software from my shed solutions or e-commerce platforms like shedhub.com, most people are like, yeah, this is really boring. But if you're in the industry and you're trying to better yourself and your approach and your business, all that information is valuable.
Right.
So you want to have those people on talking about their product, and just have a mutual space where no one's blacklisted. Everyone's welcome. Even if you compete with them, hey, come on here, talk about your product.
Well, yeah, a rising tide raises all ships.
It's funny that you say that. That's kind of become the tagline. One of the early guests said, "A rising tide lifts all boats," early on, and we just ran with that ever since.
Okay.
Yeah. My mindset is, there's an equator and there's people above it and there's people below it in the shed industry. Whether you're hauling, selling, it really doesn't matter. For the people down here to come up to the equator does not hurt any of us. It just means we all rise as an industry. And my thought has been to try and like almost become a representative for the shed industry, a resource to say, hey, maybe we can reach the customer at some point. A lot of people don't know they can get sheds delivered to their backyard still.
Right.
They just didn't know that's a possibility. They would never know that there's a shed hauler bash every year where, 500 or 600 people get together and 100 rigs and, get together and have a big barbecue and a hangout, even though they compete just to have fun, or trade shows about specifically the shed industry.
They can literally put one in their backyard like a storage unit. And it's probably there within a couple of days.
Yeah. It's like, I think, a lot of people don't know that that's a possibility still, as big of an industry as it is.
So here's a niche market I've come across a little bit recently, and I've had a client visit about this because they're looking at getting into this, but they're building, and it depends in parts of the country, especially where there's maybe a lot of lakes, and with COVID, it shifted some things, but people are building really nice sheds that really are more or less an office.
Yeah.
And they're not going somewhere for work. So they've got that shed in the backyard with a great view, and it's finished out and looks gorgeous. And I've been in Zoom calls and in meetings with people that are in those. And then eventually I figure out they're literally sitting in a little shed behind their house, but it's got a little heat AC unit into it. And are you seeing that gain some popularity?
Yeah. This was especially something that was peculiar during the COVID era, if that's what you want to call it. It was kind of odd. Our industry increased. We actually couldn't find, if you couldn't sell sheds during the pandemic, you really weren't going to be able to sell sheds probably.
Right.
We were running out of inventory. Lead times on a typical shed might be 2 to 4 or 4 to 6 weeks, pretty standard. We were hearing lead times of like 18 weeks. I don't even know how you measure an 18 or 22 week lead time. Like, how do you know it's not going to be 17? How do you know it's not going to be 14? Like, you're just giving your best guess. But the point is, people were still buying with 3 months out because they were stuck at home.
Right.
And when they're stuck at home, they start to really pay attention to, oh no, I don't need to work at the kitchen table. I need my own space. I need quiet. That's the beauty of going to the office. You go to the office, and when you leave the office, you come home, you check out. You're home. I listen to a lot of podcasts too, and I was listening to one that was talking about how we've changed at home, right? How we can't identify when we're working and when we're not, because those home offices they've just blown up in the shed industry for sure. We saw a massive increase.
Yeah. Well, and that's it's probably unfortunate. I work from home a lot myself, and it was just clearly one of the first thoughts I had this morning is, I wonder what it'd be like to take a vacation.
Yeah.
And it kind of, and it's something I'm going to think a little more about, because I travel, I get away, but there's not a single day, and I don't know how many years I've not been checking emails, answering phone calls. It just happens every day.
Yeah.
And even if I'm on vacation, and I look back and I go, that's not I don't think it's a positive thing.
No,
I need to be able to shut down and get away. And it's just something I'm going to focus on a little bit more. But the end of the day, you seem to have the ability to relate to people and connect people. And as I see that happen, and as you talk about the things you experienced in life, if you were to summarize some of this, though, would you really go through and change anything you've experienced?
Oh gosh. No. I don't think that I could answer yes to that. I do believe that all events basically lead to another road. It's just a bunch of arteries that eventually are leading to a bigger purpose. And I think, I don't know, I guess to me, no, I wouldn't change it. Even the heartache, even the disappointments, the frustrations, the blood, sweat, and tears. And literally, I mean that in the sense of blood, sweat, and tears. And you develop these defense mechanisms, and you said it, because these different traumatic experiences, that really happen. And I think it's probably just learning learning, like I said, how to be your biggest cheerleader whenever those moments happen. But no, I wouldn't change them. I would just maybe change the way I would have reacted to some of them.
And I ask that simply for listeners, not for your or my benefit, because
Yeah.
I could expect you to answer it that way. But the thing I want to have come across, and clearly the name of my podcast is Mindset Growth, and I think that it's important for all the listeners, if they take one thing away from Shannon, I won't call you Sean anymore. If there's one thing to take away that I want them to really understand is the fact that you continue to educate yourself
Absolutely.
and push forward and improve yourself every day. It wasn't that something came easy to you. Recently seen somebody post out there that everybody gets 1 to 2 breaks in their life. And I will argue that we get a break every day. I mean, every day we get up, we have another opportunity.
Yeah.
And I just appreciate you being so open with that. And I guess if there's a lesson I want my viewers to take from this is the fact that here's an individual that in some cases, many years ago already, you could make decisions which path you were going to take.
Mm-hmm.
But you kept pushing what seemed to be the hard one.
Yeah, for sure.
And I am going to have to guess, and I'm going to ask you, if you'd have went the direction that people were advising you to go, or you now took your own path, even though it was a lot more, like you said, blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah.
Which one brings the most fulfillment?
I
Not
would,
about always even maybe the best as far as society
right.
views it, but which one brings you the most fulfillment?
No, for sure. Your own path is it's I mean, you have to settle with yourself at the end of every day, don't you? You have to lay down and you have to have only you and what's happening in your mind. Really at the end of the day. And so you're always going to have that nagging at you. I feel like it's something that for me is just never going to go away. I have to get alone with myself in my own headspace. And that almost happens when you put your head on the pillow at night and you say, do I feel good about my decision? I mean, what if it doesn't work out? But at the end of the day, it was your decision, and you decided to move forward with what you were hoping to accomplish. And if you've got directions and those directions are coming from above, and you really feel like that's a passion, that's a direction you're supposed to be going, you're not always going to be adored. You are going to have enemies. You are going to have those who speak out against you. How do you overcome that is the question. How do you become your own biggest cheerleader when no one else will cheer for you?
Yeah. A couple of things there too is you've got to believe in yourself because no one else will. And that's not completely true because your wife, I'm sure, does, and your kids. But at the end of the day, when you're talking about putting your head on the pillow, what's going on inside of it, you've got to believe in yourself. That's number one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Top priority. And that's where you can fight that battle of
you're unique. You're unique. You were born unique. You were created to be unique. We know that the word says we're made in God's image. Well, what's the first thing you learn about God is if you read chronologically in the Bible within 6 words, it says, in the beginning, God created. He's creative. That's the first thing you learn about his personality. I mean, created you, created me.
So you're a little more godly than the folks that are not as creative?
Yeah, I would. That wouldn't be true.
I'm kidding with you there.
Yeah,
but so for our listeners, where can they find information about you?
Sure. So I have a website, shedgeek.com. You can email me at info@shedgeek.com. Obviously social media platforms, YouTube channel, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, pretty much everything at this point. I'm sure TikTok and MeWe and what else? I don't know. I can keep going, right? They never stop. But you can find me online. You're welcome to call me and just chat if you've got a question about the shed industry. That's really where I feel like I find my home. But if something else on this podcast touched you, and you wanted to have a conversation about it, I'd be glad to have that too.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on our podcast, Shannon, and sharing your time with us. It's always fun to have guests in the studio, And so you
this is
you
nice.
offered to make this long drive, and I feel bad that you
Oh, no,
did
not
this,
at all.
But I
This
feel
was
like
worth it.
we've made new friend, or I've made a new friend, and
For
so
sure.
I can see this relationship continuing without any doubt. There's so many things I think we can relate on, even from personal aspects, even though we come from two different cultures. But with that, I appreciate you joining us on Mindset Growth Podcast. Today's episode of Mindset Growth Podcast is brought to you by Next Level Marketing. Reach out to Gary Bontrager Consulting for a free audit on your social media and website and see how you can improve your marketing and improve the space in which you serve your clients. Thank you for joining us.